We all love a good underdog story, right? Whether it's a ragtag group of rebels fighting off a massive empire, or a colony finally getting its very own flag hoisted into the sky, we tend to view independence as this ultimate happily ever after. It's a triumph of the human spirit. But if you actually look at a world map today, you're going to notice something incredibly strange. There are dozens of territories around the globe right now that are perfectly capable of having their own distinct culture and identity, but they never actually leave their motherland. Why? Well, for some regions, breaking away and becoming independent isn't a fairy tale ending at all. It's actually an economic death sentence.
You know, most people assume these places are just fiercely loyal to their homeland. But the reality is a whole lot more cynical. The romantic idea of total freedom clashes incredibly hard with what we call the resource trap. These seemingly loyal territories are actually stuck in a cold, hard, and strictly economic relationship that they practically can never leave. They're bound by these deep geopolitical mechanics that make independence way too dangerous, or honestly, just way too expensive to even consider.
So let's just dive right in. To understand exactly why nations actively choose to pass on their independence, we're going to look at 1. The defense debt, 2. The manufacturing loop, 3. The sugar mommy strategy, 4. The integration trap, and finally, 5. The true cost of sovereignty.
Starting off with number 1, the defense debt and affording security.
Think about what it takes to be a truly independent country. A government has to feed its people, educate its citizens, and above all else, defend its borders. And affording that security is astronomically expensive. To put this into perspective, let's look at French Guiana, over in South America. This is a massive territory. It is roughly the size of the entire European country of Austria. That is a staggering amount of land, dense jungle, and open coastline to manage and protect.
But here is the critical data point that changes absolutely everything. 300,000. That is the entire population of French Guiana. Just imagine trying to defend an Austria-sized border with a population that small. The physical logistics make it virtually impossible to raise an army large enough, let alone wealthy enough, to secure that much territory.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the defense debt dilemma. If French Guiana woke up and declared independence tomorrow, they would immediately lose the protection and the immense funding of the French military. Without that massive Big Brother support system backing them up, a small nation sitting on a whole lot of land and resources is basically just an open invitation for neighboring countries to waltz right in and take whatever they want.
And we know for a fact this happens because history proves it. Just look right next door at the country of Guyana, which became independent from Britain back in 1966. Almost immediately after that British military umbrella vanished, its neighbor, Venezuela, started eyeing its coastline. They were literally threatening Guyana's ability to even use their own rivers for trade. Independence is a beautiful concept, absolutely, but if you can't pay for your own security, it is incredibly dangerous.
Which brings us to number 2, the manufacturing loop and economic sabotage.
Having natural resources doesn't automatically mean you have wealth. Empires, like Spain for example, used a genius, albeit completely ruthless, blueprint to guarantee their colonies stay dependent. Step 1. Limit trade. If you were a cacao farmer in a Spanish colony, you couldn't just sell to the highest bidder on the open market. You had exactly one legal customer, and that was Spain. Step 2, and this is where it gets really devious, ban the colony from building their own machines. This right here is exactly why cacao was grown in the Americas, but chocolate was invented in Europe. The colonies simply were not allowed to possess the machinery required to process their own raw goods.
This creates what we call the dependency loop. The colony does all the heavy lifting to provide the raw materials, but the homeland strictly controls the skilled labor and the final manufactured goods. If a colony caught in this loop tries to break away, they suddenly find themselves sitting on a massive mountain of cacao beans, but with absolutely zero way to turn it into a product the rest of the world actually wants to buy. It's exactly like being stuck in a toxic internship, right? You know you could totally succeed on your own, but your boss intentionally holds you back by owning every piece of essential equipment you need to actually do the job.
Moving on to number 3, the sugar mummy strategy and geopolitical leverage.
Sometimes a nation possesses so many massive resources that this sheer abundance actually prevents them from ever achieving independence. It's totally counterintuitive. Take a look at Greenland. It is a giant island, but its environment is so freezing and harsh that its capital city has a population of fewer than 20,000 people. Much like our French Guiana example earlier, there just aren't enough people here to independently run a modern global economy, much less field an entire military.
But here's the catch. Greenland is sitting on a gold mine. Beneath all that melting ice lies a staggering amount of untapped future resources. We're talking oil, minerals, gas. Because of this immense future value, every single major world power wants to step in and act as Greenland's sugar mommy. The strategy is pretty simple. Superpowers step in, they offer to cover the astronomical costs of surviving there, and in exchange, they get influence. This effectively traps the territory as a highly strategic prize.
And let me tell you, the superpowers are more than happy to pay out these geopolitical bribes. This comes in the form of robust military protection, incredibly lucrative research deals, and just straight-up direct financial aid money. But the absolute most crucial point to remember here is that they aren't providing these benefits out of the kindness of their hearts. They do it out of fear. They are utterly terrified that if Greenland becomes truly independent, it might just side with their global enemies. So in this trap, claiming independence wouldn't bring freedom. It would just trigger a massive, completely destabilizing bidding war between global superpowers.
All right, Section 4, the integration trap and mutual symbiosis.
Now, unlike the previous examples that were largely driven by leverage or fear, in this trap, territories voluntarily choose to stay integrated with a larger power. Look at both ends of the economic spectrum here in the US. On one side, you've got places like Alaska or Hawaii, which might be too physically isolated to survive entirely on their own, or they heavily require central government aid to fund massive, vital infrastructure projects. But flip to the other side. Look at an incredibly wealthy powerhouse like California. The dependency is still there. California relies heavily on the rest of the nation for a massive, friction-free customer pool, and of course, the protection of a global military.
Over time, this mutual symbiosis creates what we call a systemic lock-in. The homeland becomes entirely dependent on the territory for its resources, its strategic positioning, or its tech, and concurrently, the territory becomes completely dependent on the homeland for its very survival and economic stability. By the time anyone even floats the idea of separating, their economies are just so deeply intertwined that a breakup wouldn't merely be difficult, it would be an act of complete and total financial suicide for everyone involved.
And finally, Section 5, the cost of sovereignty and paying the bill.
When we strip away all those romantic ideals, the rebellions, the new flags, the fireworks, we are left with the cold, hard mathematics of running a nation. As this quote perfectly captures, independence isn't just about a declaration, it's about whether you can afford the bill that comes with it. When many highly capable territories sit down and actually run the numbers, calculating the astronomical costs of border defense, the sheer grueling difficulty of building domestic manufacturing from scratch, and the very real danger of losing geopolitical leverage, well, the math pretty much speaks for itself. For a lot of these regions, remaining a territory or a highly integrated state isn't a sign of weakness at all. It's actually just the smartest business move they can possibly make.
So, having explored the defense debt, the manufacturing loop, the sugar mommy strategy, and the integration trap, I want to turn it over to you. Which region in the world do you think is the biggest resource trap today? I'd love for you to apply these geopolitical mechanics to our modern map, and let's debate the answers down in the comments. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.